Hi, my name is Paul, and we are going to talk about certificate intelligence today, a tool that executes from a web-based platform we call ICE Direct. Now, sitting directly behind me is a representation of the primary menu that controls access to the functions of certificate intelligence. Today, we're going to focus on those things that deal with accessing the RACF data store and its understanding of certificates and certificate key rings. Now, there are lots of things that certificate intelligence can do. It can, for example, help you build multi-SAN certificates. It can help you to create the signing infrastructure that's necessary in order to create an environment for signing system resources as part of a clean room activity designed to meet the compliance requirements of validated boot or validated IPL or whatever. There's just a whole bunch of stuff, creating certificates, firing them off to your certificate authority, installing them, unbundling them when they come back. All of those things can be done in certificate intelligence. You can even easily become your own CA. It's particularly important for certificates that are just used internally and not necessarily needed for transactional purposes on the internet. So if you give me just a second, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and we're going to drop right in to certificate intelligence, and I'm going to give you a brief review of its ability to access and display information in the RACF data store. Now, I say brief because there's so much here, as the boss would say, it's going to take time to see it all. And so if you want more of this, if you see something here that's of interest to you or can solve a problem for you, come back to us and we'll present you with a full-blown demonstration of what certificate intelligence is capable of doing. So let me go ahead and share my screen now, and we'll go ahead and get started. Okay, so now, with any luck, we're looking at the frame set that controls access to the ICE Direct platform. You can reach this frame set directly from the internet, or if you choose to do it, you could set this up to be accessible only through ZOSMF. And there are advantages to using ZOSMF because in those cases, ICE Direct inherits the security that surrounds ZOSMF and the security that's associated with the individual links that are appropriate within the ZOSMF environment. Of course, you can do this directly from the internet if you're set up accordingly to do that. And there are controls and security processes in place, including multi-factor authentication, that can protect this environment from nefarious players, people who try to log on from the wrong IP addresses or attempt to access a firewall that doesn't know who they are. Just a whole bunch of stuff that can prevent and control the integrity of the interface that you're looking at now. Now, from an orientation perspective, when you look at the left-hand margin, you see a list of a bunch of different application names that all begin with my. And these my applications are specific to the users of Image Focus and the control editor. And we can come back and we can spend more time on those if you are a control editor or Image Focus user. We'd be happy to do it to show you what advantages you can gain from using ICE Direct to access those tools. But today we're going to click on a function that we refer to as the Visual Application Stack. Now, the stack itself is made up of 5 different applications: ZOS Visual, RACF Visual, ICSF Visual, CERT Visual, and Client Assist. Now, all of these are independent. All of these are independently licensed, but all of them have underlying basic functionality that is integrated to provide you with a complete view, no matter which application you are in, of the target of interest. So if you're in certificate intelligence and you need to know about a profile and its permits, let's say, to a key ring, just because you are not licensed for a RACF visual doesn't mean you won't get access to that information. You just won't have as broad an access. So they are independent, they are licensed separately, but each one of them shares a common underlying structure that allows them to share information one with the other. So I'm going to go ahead and click on Cert Visual. By the way, keyboards are not specifically necessary here. There's just a few instances where we're going to need them. Most of everything is point and shoot, really quite simple to use. But like any interface, the first time you see it, it might seem somewhat overwhelming. Believe me, I guess the best way to describe what this interface is capable of doing is to turn certificate management into some sort of a movie where things just keep unfolding themselves to you as you drill down deeper and deeper into the specifics of a given key ring or a given certificate, or perhaps some tangential type information, like, as I mentioned, a profile, a permit. What about a PKDS label? What about a TKDS label? All of these things can be attached and become a part of a certificate's overall control structure, and certificate intelligence will give you access to all of it. So let's do some simple stuff here. Supposing the question arose, do we have any certificates that are going to expire in the next 30 days? Well, if you look up at the top here of the panel, you'll see that there's an entry point that allows us to enter the term expired 30, and then gives us the ability to query the certificate data store of RACF. And in this case, we are looking for just in-entity certificates. Those are the ones that are likely to have expiration dates that will impact us more frequently. The other kinds of certificates, those that are used as intermediates or roots, normally come from a certificate authority, and those end dates on those certificates are generally quite longer. But these are normally 1 year, maybe max 2 years. So we want to make sure we stay on top of those that are going to be expired. So all I have to do is check the box, fill in the number, and click. Now, you could have hundreds, maybe thousands of certificates in your RACF data store. And the reason that we provide this filtering type of interface is to narrow the search space that we are attempting to get to help to improve performance. The wider you make that search criteria, the longer it's going to take. I'm on a ZPDT, so it will take a lot longer for me to search for thousands to thousands of certificates than it will you on your hardware. So here you can see a representation of an interface that we have that's showing us the name of a certificate. It's telling us that it has a private label. It's telling us that its primary use is for signature or for certificate signing. It's letting us know it has a fingerprint. It's not hooked to a key ring. And it has a certificate chain of trust. And you can see over on the right-hand side, it's highlighted the fact that this particular certificate is going to expire on 12/30 of this year. And it belongs to me. This is my owner ID over here on the left-hand side. Now, if I click on it, we're drilling down now into the certificate itself to see what its content is. And here we see up at the top a brief summary. It has a private key. The key is a NIST type key. Its length is 258. Its strength is considered very high. It also has a PKDS label that's associated with it. And we'll come back and click on that in just a moment to show you the integration that goes on between certificate intelligence as it explores the RACF data store, but as an ability to tangentially spring off into ICSF to see what the relationships are there, because those are critically important as well. We know it's trusted. We know it's going to expire in 13 days. It happens to be self-signed. It's not connected to any keyring. It uses TLS 1.2, and it's a new certificate because behind the scenes here, we have taken a baseline of the entire RACF data store. And so any changes that take place to any of these certificates become immediately visible as we drill down into them. The reason for that is to prevent you from being surprised by changes that might have occurred to a certificate that you happen to be unaware of. Now, you see down below what we refer to as side-by-side display. Now, what we are showing you here is the difference between the complete extraction of the information that is in this certificate versus what RACF can provide you when you use the RACDcert list command. Let me just give you a couple of examples. For example, notice on the left-hand side, this guy says that the subject alternate names include all of these, www.newera.com, all the way down to validated, at newera.com, a combination of DSN names and a combination of IP addresses, email addresses. Now, if you look on the right-hand side, you'll see what RACF provides you with. And you'll see that it only shows you 2 of those items, the first 2. And that's it. There isn't any more for it to show you, or there is more for it to show you, but it can't do it. So one of the things that we are trying to provide in certificate intelligence is the Gestalt view of the certificate and its content, without removing RACF from the scene, because I'm sure some of you will be familiar with the way RACF is presenting information through its RACDcert list command. But we need to be certain that we're able to show you the full picture. And that's what our intention here is really all about. So if we look again on the left-hand side, we'll see things like the signature type. We'll see what it supports. That particular signature supports both TLS 1.2 and 1.3. You don't see that information being provided by RACF. You don't know whether or not it has a specific public key or what that might be. In this case, it's an elliptical curve type public key. Before and after dates, of course, are the same. Key identifiers are all the same. And importantly, both RACF and our cert display show us the fingerprint that is associated with a given certificate. And that fingerprint is critically important. And you notice on the, on the RACF side, we show only the SHA-256 fingerprint. That's what RACF shows. On the cert display side, we show both the SHA-256 fingerprint and the SHA-1 fingerprint. Now, the SHA-1 fingerprint may not be critically important on a go-forward basis, but it's good to know that it's there and that it's stored there. And in order to prevent any confusion, and again, to present the full picture of what is stored in RACF, we're presenting that information in our side-by-side view. Now, if you look down at the bottom here, you'll see a bunch of additional commands that allow us to take additional action. For example, we could delete the certificate. We could export this certificate if we chose to do it. And in exporting it, we're going to set it up for you so you can do it easily. We're going to know what the certificate name is. We're going to assign an export data set. We're going to let you create versions of that process if you choose to do it. We already know who the certificate owner is, and we know what kind of file type we're going to use in the export itself, Cert B64. If we had a PKCS12 type of certificate that we wanted to export, we could also provide a keyword. Now, from here, just an example of what it is we do in certificate intelligence. We actually created the RACF cert commands. We generate commands, we display what we generate. We even suggest that from time to time you grab one of these commands, like I just did, go to TSO option 6 and drop it in and watch it run, because that's exactly what we're doing. Under the covers here, this interface is a command generator and an executor in concert with RACD cert. So there's no mystery, nothing here to really be concerned about. Now, if I go ahead and submit it, it'll take that action for us. And now it comes back and it says, hey, would you like to view the export data set? I said, sure. Why not? Well, guess what? When we view the export data set, we view its content as you see here on the left-hand side. This is what we were looking at just earlier. You can see all of the SANs that are in our multi-SAN certificate. But if you look on the right-hand side, you actually see the content that's in the certificate export file itself. Now, if you wanted to, I'm not saying you should do it, but if you wanted to, if this was an easier way for you to get your job done, you could just simply copy this, drop it in an email, and send it wherever it needs to go. Now, you may have internal policies that prevent you from being able to do that, so be careful about it. But the specific identification of this specific certificate is always shown at the top of this possible copy and paste job. So there's no mystery about what all these codes mean. You could paste this into a file. You could come back to it later. You could say, oh yeah, I know this is the October 10 file. The bill date was this date. The export date was that date. And here's the export file name. So you don't have to send the file if you don't want to. This is typical of the ease of use that you will find throughout certificate intelligence. Now, let me back up a little bit because I'm running over here. I always get a little wordy because I'm excited about this, as you obviously can tell. We can do the same thing with CertAuth and site type certificates, but let's click and do something with a keyring. So let's get a keyring. My friend Charles Mills has one out there. His user ID is CMills1. So we're saying, hey, give us all the keyrings that are owned by the user CMills1. Okay, let's do that. And here we get a list of all the certificates, all the keyrings that he owns with specific information about them, which we call purposing. Some people call it profiling of the keyring itself. What's it do? What's its description? What's its configuration? Does it have an RDataLive profile? If it does, who's permitted to it? And speaking of RDataLive, let me just click on that. And here's another point of integration, a point where we are now looking at the integration of certificate intelligence into the RACF profiles and permits. Now here we have a SETROPTS panel that's displaying the RDataLive class. We have 35 profiles. Here they are. The one in green is the one that we just selected. The ones in red essentially are useless. They don't have any current relationship to any, any key rings in RACF, so those need to be deleted, and they exist only because of my experimentation. The ones that are in the lighter salmon color are not valid, RDataLive profiles, because they don't begin with a user ID. All of these profiles have to be owned by some specific user ID, the owner of the key ring itself. From here, we can drill down even further. Those were the profiles. And here are the permits. And if we chose to, we could add additional users. Oops, excuse me. PHAL2, we want to give him access of read, and we'll go ahead and permit him. So you should get the idea now that one of the advantages of certificate intelligence is this integration that I'm speaking of, that it speeds up the process, makes it easier for you to get your work done. And since there are already so many moving parts in the certificate world, it makes it easy not to forget anything, not to realize that some things need permitting, some things need profiles, et cetera, et cetera. And now you can see PHAL2 has been added, and we're essentially good to go. The backup button is our best friend, just backing up, backing up, backing up. I'll go back in it again. Okay, so now we could do something else. We could say, hey, we like what Charles has. We like seeing that. But we like to find a key ring, and we can't quite remember what the name of the thing is, but we know it had the word boot in it. So we can just simply say, give us all the key rings that have the word boot in. And it'll come back, and it'll say, yes, here's a key ring that has the word boot in it. This one happens to be a key ring that I own that deals with the signing infrastructure associated with validated boot. And you can see here that when there is a specialized type of key ring, that is not an ordinary type of key ring, but a specialized type of key ring, like a validated boot key ring, we automatically add the facilities class interface to allow you to define the additional profile that's going to be necessary in order to create the signing infrastructure. If we wanted to add another certificate to this, if we chose to do it, we could click on add an additional certificate, but you might have a lot of them. Show you that in just a minute. Or you could, if you wanted to, enter the name of a certificate that you knew you wanted to enter, and maybe it will look something like this. I put in China. I'm not picking on anybody. I just happen to remember that. And it comes back and says, no, no, I'm sorry, we didn't have one of those. Okay, that's fine. Let's go back. My memory is probably not as good as it should be. We'll just click on the whole thing. We'll see the whole list. I think you'll get a kick out of this. This is something you cannot see in RACF. This is not possible. It will show you the level of integration that exists between certificate intelligence and the other aspects of certificate management that are part of the overall RACF control structure and ICSF control structure. So here we see the list of all of the certificates. You can see whether they have private keys or not, where they are stored. Private key, yes, in blue. Blue means no private key. Without a color means does have a private key. If it has a private key, if it's stored in the PKDS, if it's expired, if it is stored in the PKDS, what is its label? Can we display that label? Yes, we can. Here's the integration into the PKDS and the display of the content of the label that's associated with it. There's no start date here, so, or no stop date, so there's no problem associated with, excuse me, with potentially this guy timing out on us. We can see that it has a CSF keys class profile, and we can see that if we chose to, we could go ahead and directly permit someone to it at this point in time. We can select one of these. Let's just scroll down here somewhere. See a lot of certificates here. I'm sure you have a lot more, but I got 172 now, which is a lot for a little company. Let's go ahead and pick one. Let's pick this one, Liberty CA. And we're going to add it. Now, by the time we got here, we might have even forgotten which keyring we were dealing with. So we've been tracking all that under the covers to make sure that it's all good. We know what kind of certificate this one happens to be. This is a CERT-AUT certificate. So we've checked option CERT-AUT. We've checked default option no, because we don't want it to be the default certificate on the keyring. I'll go ahead and click it, confirm it. And now we'll redisplay the keyring. And so you can see now that that particular certificate has been added to the keyring. And you can see we put a little notification marker out on the left-hand side here to make sure that you can spot it, because you might have a lot of certificates available there. There's some coloration that is going on here that's designed to indicate root and intermediate and entity certificates. I messed it up because I put this Liberty certificate in there. If I want to get rid of it, I can just click on the trash can. Again, we're generating the code under the covers and submitting it to RACF for execution. And that's the whole magic here, is the interface is doing that work for you. And now we're back and it's gone. And you can see a little bit more about how the coloration works. In terms of the root certificate, since it's the root, its colors are the same. Since it's an entity certificate, it is connected to the root. That's why it has blue. And then green always means I'm the end guy. You could have yellow and red and a whole bunch of different colors in there if you had different intermediate certificates. All right, now you can get lost in here, there's no doubt about it, but this panel up here at the top is always there. It never goes away. And so if you ever want to come back, you just scroll back up to the top. Now let me show you one last thing. If I click on CERT-AUT, excuse me. If I click on CERT-AUT and site certificates and don't check anything, I'm going to do a full audit of all of those certificate types that are stored in RACF. Now, this is going to come in handy probably this coming year and years after, when you wind up having to make decisions about the strength of the certificates that you have and whether or not you want to replace them. Because obviously, with things like AI and quantum computing coming along, knowing that a certificate has an appropriate signing algorithm is going to be critical. And being able to find those and get the answers quickly is something that this can do for you. Knowing what kind of key types you have, knowing what key sizes you have, whether or not they're trusted or not, whether or not they're stored in ICSF or not, All of that is revealed in this audit. And if you chose to do it, we are seeing it as an audit summary. Now we're going to see it as an audit listing. It takes time, lots of data, lots of exploration, lots of analysis going on. It'll be faster on your machine, I believe. So here it is. Here's all of those Cert Audit and site certificates laid out in what? A worksheet that allows you to point and shoot and click and do whatever it is that you want to do. Of course, all these ones that are highlighted in salmon, these guys have all expired. If they were 30 days or 60 days, they would be highlighted here too in slightly different colors. And you can see the coloration map across the top. Okay, so listen, I could go on forever. I don't want to, but I will go as long as you want to go if you contact us at newera.com, or you can contact me directly, prr@newera.com, or try icedirect@newera.com, or try support@newera.com, and we'll give you as much of this as you can stand. Okay, all right, enough for today. We'll talk to you guys soon. Bye-bye.